Hey there, Aligned You listeners. This is Dr. M here, and welcome to our Aligned and Thriving season and series of interviews. I am super pumped to be sharing a series of stories and interviews with some amazing humans. People, some who I've admired from a distance for a long period of time, others who I know personally and call dear friends and feel very privileged to do so. This series is designed to actually dive deeper into what allows them to truly live an aligned you life and to be thriving, whether that's in their work life, their home life, or their play life, and working out truly, is there common themes or is everyone different and we really do all reach our full potential in our own unique way. Enjoy this season. I've had an absolute pleasure and joy recording it. I'm your host, Dr. M, and you're listening to Aligned You, a podcast designed to assist you to truly be aligned through your body, head, and heart so you can reach your full potential in your own unique way. Hey there, Aligned You listeners, Dr. M here, and welcome to this week's episode. This week's episode I'm super excited about and pumped because it's our next installment of this series of our Aligned and Thriving series. And I have the wonderful Tristan Bond with me today. I'll tell you more in a moment about how he came into my sphere. As you've heard me talk about often, amazing people come into my sphere at the right time, and I'll share more about that in just a moment. Tristan's journey began as a physiotherapist. Now, that might sound shocking to you folks. Chiropractors and physiotherapists can actually speak to each other. We might talk a bit more about that today. He established his first practice at the ripe old age of 23 and fell in love with the business side of healthcare. Something else we're probably going to bust through today, I have a feeling about too, because sometimes people don't think we should be running businesses when we're running practices, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. I won't get off on a tangent too early. His passion led him to fully immersing himself in business so that he could live a life of his own design. You guys hear me talking about that a lot. And by 25, he achieved a lot by the sounds of it, and he fell into actually advising other professionals when colleagues and associates kept asking him for help about how he was doing it and how they could run their businesses better. By the age of 26, he was actually moved into consulting because of the demand and specializing in healthcare practice growth. Fast forward to now, and his business, Practice Acceleration, has helped over 2,500 folks, 2,500 practices globally across all healthcare niches. See, chiropractors can talk to physiotherapists and vice versa. And with their consulting and patients on demand software system, he's been helping people around the globe. His book titled The Practice Acceleration Model is a bestseller in 4 different business categories. He's driven by core values of growth, accountability, speed, and is obsessed with constant innovation. Apart from being an author and entrepreneur, most importantly, he's a fur dad to 2 miniature schnauzers, Lila and Otis, and is completely dedicated to his loving partner, Nike, who he met whilst dog walking. We're also kindred spirits there, by the way, because I met my beautiful wife for the first time walking our dogs. But we'll talk more about that in a moment. Welcome to Aligned You, Tristan. Thanks so much for giving me some time today.
Thank you so much for having me, Maria. I'm going to call you Dr. M from now on.
Please do.
So cool. We are aligned. And one of the things you said is people come into your life at the right time, and you're a great example of that for me. I'm lit up in your presence, and I'm just really delighted to be here and to have you in my life. So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you. And so I actually mentioned it on an episode, I think it was 4 or 5 episodes ago. So I actually had a bit of a break from podcasting for the first 6 months of this year, Tristan. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. But
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because for a few different reasons. One, there was definitely some trials and tribulations going on for us in our home life. For me, on a personal health level, I've been going through the joyous throes of perimenopause. So I was suffering with quite bad brain fog earlier in the year, and I felt like it was affecting my ability to speak in full sentences, let alone get on a mic. And then the other component to that was that the practice itself, which if you are watching our YouTube channel, you see my beautiful Space Mitchell Road Chiropractic behind us.
Stunning.
Is the practice.
Stunning.
Thank you. The practice was struggling. And when I actually had to make a change, and I have been watching you from afar for many, many years. I used to be a part of a different practice management group that was specially for chiropractors.
I recall, and I think I know the fellow, and he's a wonderful guy as well.
Yeah.
He's a wonderful guy.
LT, Lawrence Tam, is an awesome guy. And
absolute legend.
Be one of his coaches on his program. So it was a big ego.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a big ego drop for me to go, fuck, I need some help because I'm actually not in a state to reinvent my own wheel right now, even though I've reinvented it for many other people in the past. I actually needed help. And I saw one of your cheeky Facebook ads that was talking about why you shouldn't actually be on Facebook advertising for clients. I went, I like this guy. I've been watching him for a long time. It's now time to actually hit go on finding out more about what it is that you do. So that's how I ended up in your sphere, and how we have ended up on a microphone talking about your journey.
I'm so glad that you did. I'm so glad that the thing is, I admire and respect you so much, and so when when you say to me that you resonate with my ad, I'm like, oh, thank goodness, because I think advertising and marketing and just messaging and being ourselves, it's like I think the world has never been at a higher point of trying to people please, and I just try to be me, and I am me. I try my best to be authentically me, and I think our messaging will polarize people away from us and towards us. We bring in the right people, and I know that when I bring people like you into my world, I'm like, great, I'll just keep being me. I need to change myself too much. I'll just be my honest version of myself.
Oh, I love that. I love that a lot. I want to, today's premise of the Aligned and Thriving series, which I did share with you before we jumped on, is to really dive into people that I admire and I think that they're successful, put my teeth back in, what it is that has brought them to their point in life now, and what it is that they do to actually stay aligned. So I want to dive back to that ripe old age of 23, or actually probably when you left school and you started studying physiotherapy.
Yes.
What drove you to wanting to be a physio, rather than, because I hear through the grapevine you come from an accountancy family.
I do. Yes.
How did you not end up go straight to numbers? How did you end up in healthcare before you jumped back in many ways back into being able to crunch numbers super well?
Thank you. Well, I'll give you the fast version of that, because I could talk about the accounting side for a long time. But and when you were asking for my bio for the show, I almost went into this. I'm like, I'm limited to 200 words. But so I'm from the country. A lot of people don't know that about me. I'm a country boy.
Ooh,
and I still have to
from
fight.
South Australia.
That's correct. Yep. From Whyalla, an iron ore town.
Yes.
So I moved to Adelaide when I was 12 to go to boarding school. My parents were really supportive of me, trying to give me the best opportunity to get me in the right environment. And I'm still a big believer of when you're in the right environment, you're either some of the 5 people around you. So they were aware of that, and they worked very hard to get me into this environment where I could go to a really high performing private school in the city. But go back to Whyalla, and it's a community. It's a fabulous community. 23,000 people, iron ore town, and sport is everything. And I got into hockey and tennis from the age of 6. Actually, tennis younger, hockey at 6, and I just became obsessed. And during my sporting journey, I suffered a really bad injury when I was 14, and I'm about to have surgery for that injury now at the age of 43. So I've carried it now for 29 years. And
what did you do? Do tell. Don't leave everyone hanging, Tristan. It's so kindred spirits.
So that could be a good conversation around chronic pain and how we just kind of manage it forever. But in any event, I was playing hockey and I got wedged between 2 players, and I suffered a burst in my bursa and a labral tear. And it was, as you can imagine, being a doctor yourself, like, you know how bad that is. And I was devastated. I couldn't play sport for 4 months, and that was my world. So I went to a physiotherapist for the first time, and I'd never heard of them, didn't know what it was. I don't think we even had a physiotherapist in Whyalla at the time. It was like GPs. There might have been, actually, there was one chiropractor. And so I had no awareness at all. And I went and saw this physio called Rick Neagle at a Wakefield Sports Clinic. And he became my hero because he got me back to doing what I loved, which was playing hockey. And so that was like when I first did it. And so but before then, like I hadn't given it any thought as to what I do, other than I enjoyed sport and I'm dedicated to most things in my life. So I was hoping I'd be able to have some choice around what I do. But when I got relief from physio, I thought that's what I want to do, because that's really rewarding and enables people to get back to sport. And it looks like there's a lot of like academia involved, so I could fulfill myself by doing that. So that's what drew me to physio. And I did work experience with Rick, And when I had the choice of choosing after school of what I do, I had a meeting with Rick to say, look, what should I do? Like I'm weighing up accounting, physio, and dentistry got in there somehow. I've got no idea how. I think maybe
you do have a good smile, so maybe.
Well, I don't really, but thank you for saying that. It makes me feel good.
You do.
I'm a words of affirmation person. So dentistry worked its way in there somehow, but really it was accounting or physiotherapy. And he talked me into physio, and it was a great decision. It was a great decision because I loved it, and I still love it. I don't do it anymore. Well, sometimes people let me work on them, but I'm not qualified.
No longer registered.
I'm not registered anymore.
You are qualified. You're just not registered anymore. Do you know what's funny? And you probably don't know this, but Aligned You listeners perhaps have heard me share my story about how I ended up being a chiropractor. So I used to play a lot of sport, and I actually saw a chiropractor for the first time because I used to roll my ankles all the time. My dad had a
I read that in your book. Yes.
Yeah. So I ended up seeing Dr. Ken Gunn. It's amazing how we remember people so distinctly when they change our world and get us back to doing what we love, which is, I think, part of why what you do and your team does with Practice Acceleration, which we'll talk more about in a moment, is so powerful because it helps people get back to doing more of what they love in the practice life that they get to do. So there's definitely a correlation there, right? And it's so funny because there's so many ironies to what we are kindred spirits, Tristan, seriously.
I know.
So I nearly wanted to be a dentist as well. We could
have done a practice together.
We could have totally done a practice together. Who knows what we'll do in the future?
It's not too late.
It's never too late. I actually just recorded an interview with a beautiful lady who runs an organisation called Silver Sirens, and the whole premise of their organisation is it's never too late to change what you're doing. But I did want to be a dentist for a minute as a 16-year-old until I actually did work experience for a dentist, was looking in people's mouths and went, oh, no, they look too much like animals, and I stepped away. And then I became a chiropractor because it rocked my world from never actually rolling my ankles ever again. And also as a 16-year-old, I was playing rep cricket for Sydney out in the country, New South Wales, and I hurt my L5 really badly. And it was after I couldn't walk in and I walked back out of a chiropractor's office. I went, that is definitely what I want to do. So it's amazing how we get inspired to do different things. When it came to running the business side of your physiotherapy practice, how were you naturally aligned with the more business side of it, or was that something you saw the necessity of understanding and you went, I've got to freaking learn how to do that?
So good question. And there's yes and no in that. So a lot of it was natural. And that comes back to the accounting conversation before. So, I do not remember a single conversation in my entire life at a mealtime that hasn't involved P&L. And it's not because my dad was talking about the need of that for him, but he was just talking about clients and examples, and he just loved what he did. And he bought his firm from his father. And so I was just always around it and found it very fascinating. And so for me, it was just, I had an awareness of it, and that probably a lot of it was unconscious. So when I went into it, I was just aware of, well, that wouldn't work if we did that. It could be like that. And it didn't occur to me that wasn't natural for other people. Because all for me, it was just, this is what we talk about at dinner, and this is just my life. So it took me a long time to actually realize that. I started getting frustrated with people around me in practices I was working in, going, why are you doing that? Like, that's really, that's not helping anybody. And we're focusing on the wrong thing. And I was offered to buy into this partnership when I was 22. So I was like 18 months in, and this fabulous guy, I won't name him on this show because we still get along really, really well. And I think he's still upset.
You'd like to keep it that way.
Yeah, I think he's still a bit upset. But we do get along great. And I actually sent someone to see him the other day. He's still practicing, and he's a magician. But he invited me to buy in, and I had to be really honest with him and say, well, I don't want to because there's too much resistance here for what I'd like to do. And I just entered the Entrepreneur of the Year Awards with Ernst & Young with an idea. It was just an idea, and they gave it some legs, and it went to the semi-finals. And I thought, maybe I could try this. And I proposed it to the practice and said, I'd really like to trial this for 90 days. And they were really stone cold against it. And shortly after that, I was offered to buy into it. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that because it sounds like they're not open to change. And I'm not right, but I'm also not wrong. But I'm very much innovation is one of my core values. So in answer to your question, I had an awareness to it, but the more I know, the more I realize I don't know. And I had such an interest in it, and I was so committed to learning about it that, and I'm still on that journey. So I hope that answers your question to some degree.
It does to a large degree. And it brings me to my next question, which I alluded to in my long-winded introduction of you, is it gets really muddled, I think, sometimes with healthcare practitioners and also clients and patients, where whether it's, and I'd love your take on this as to what drives the confusion around somebody's hands-on or life practice in terms of their vocation and the profession that they are trained in, and then the correlation between running a functioning business. Because it's like sometimes people think that, and I don't know whether you got taught this when you were studying physiotherapy, it kind of got drilled into us in university from a chiropractic point of view of, you need to help everyone. And the way then that I process that, and partly because of my family's background in small business and also my mum's vocation of helping people that weren't in such a great position, is giving a lot of stuff away versus actually valuing the monetary exchange of what happens within a healthcare practice and business. I'd love your thoughts on that, because I see so many people getting muddled with it. I certainly was muddled with it early on in practice. Took me a while to get my head around it.
Likewise. So I didn't ever have a firm belief around how to bring the two of them together, and I also don't believe that we are our beliefs. So what I believe in today will change as we evolve. So it's just experiential learnings, and I didn't pick up on anything powerful or valuable from my family background with regard to that either, because my dad was a chronic undercharger and a chronic people pleaser, and still is. So I really came from that side of like helping everybody, undercharging, getting them through, not following up debtors, just like, I want to help. But for me, it was like, how do I break that belief and look at how do I actually look at a value exchange where it's valuing me as well and it's valuing them, and that no one's missing out. So if I fast forward now 20 odd years, I've been doing this a long time, and I do a lot of work with mindset, as you know, inside our program. But I believe that if someone is going to value what you do, there needs to be a value exchange. And I also believe that it's a very funny thing in healthcare that if we talk about money and so on, it's almost looked down upon. And I understand that. So I need to be careful with what I say, because I can be polarizing this way or that way. But the reality is, I believe that you can ethically run business and make a lot of money, and they don't need to be independent. In fact, I believe that they need to coexist. I believe that in order to feel fulfilled, you need to feel that you're valued. And anyone that is getting underpaid is lying to themselves if they're saying that they're being lit up with joy every day. They really are. And it's like I call it the known but unspoken. And it's when I have a one-to-one conversation, when I say, look, do you ever feel like, what do you feel like you're worth? Honestly, what are you getting paid now? How does that manifest in your behavior? And so when I have these one-to-one conversations, the truth comes out. So I believe that if you're doing something and you're not feeling really valued, and if you're not getting paid what you're worth, you're not feeling valued, things will then come out in your behavior that are undesirable. Perhaps you'll see patients for a shorter period because you're not comfortable with charging what you're worth, but there's an economy of scale. Or perhaps you'll bring on less staff members than required because you don't want to pay for the staff hours because you want that money for yourself, but you're too scared to have the conversation around increasing your fees. Like, we're kind of compensating one way or the other. And the reality is that deep down, everyone listening to this knows that I'm saying is true, but they won't necessarily say it out loud. So we all have this number where we're like, this is what I believe I'm worth. And the truth is, we all believe we're worth more than we're currently getting. We all do. That's a known truth that Robert Cialdini has discovered. I'm sure you know Robert Cialdini from
Not
Influence
personally, but I know.
Persuasion. Yeah. The interesting thing was he was actually supposedly behind the Hillary Clinton campaign when they started making a big comeback. So he knows psychology. But we all believe that we're worth more. That's a known thing. So it's funny because the real roadblock is people don't like conflict. People don't want to have a difficult conversation with a staff member or a patient or anyone in their environment. So if they're seen to be wanting something they don't have, they're worried about the pushback. So that's what's really going on, is that people aren't able to talk about it in a way where they feel safe, and they're not able to become successful in a way where they feel safe. So that's what's really going on. And the interesting thing is this is especially true in healthcare, but it's true of all businesses, to be honest.
Yeah. You see, and I see that all the time with different colleagues and other mates that I have that are outside of healthcare as well. It's that, what am I worth and how am I going to have that conversation? And also, I think the other layer of that is the fear of rejection as well, not just that people-pleasing side of things, but what if somebody says no?
Yeah. I mean, I think people-pleasing comes from that fear of rejection, to be honest. So we do and it's not as simple as, and I see, oh my goodness, the coaching world is exploding with people that want to become coaches that don't know what they're doing. And they'll say, well, great, just charge more and it will happen. I'm like, no, well, it's actually like a cognitive behavioral therapy exercise to go through to change your behavior. And what are the triggers that are going to drag you back into it? How do we manage our thoughts as we bring about a shift and so on? Like, there's a lot of work to be done because these habits and behaviors have been ingrained for a very long time. So we can't get rid of them, but how do we manage our behaviors towards, well, this is what I really want, but my behaviors aren't matching that. So how do I do that in a way where I feel safe, little bit by little bit?
I love that. How long have you been practicing what you preach in terms of that side of things, of making sure you're charging what you're worth, and particularly within the coaching world as well, right?
Yeah.
Because you've been coaching and running mentorship programs for a long time now.
17 years. Yeah.
Yeah, just a minute. So a good long minute, overnight success over 17 years.
That's right.
Did you need to bust through any of those things yourself, Tristan, when you first started your coaching business?
Definitely, and still do. It's part of being human. Yeah, it's part, like, I'm in two parts, like curious, envious, and also distrustful. So 3 parts of people when they say that they've managed that, because I just think it's part of being human. Like we all have self-doubt and what we charge for ourselves, of course. So my rule of thumb really now is I'm like, well, if I'm working with someone, like, and I'm figuring out how to charge for that, I'm like, well, how can I give that person 10 times value based on my fee? Because if my fee is this, if I know I can give 10 times value, and that's the right level. So if I'm going to charge more, I need to bring more value again. And that's the way that I look at that. That's just an exercise I've developed for myself. Not everyone's the same. They might be like, what's market rate and so on. They can look at it that way. How do they want to be perceived in the market? But I'm continually looking at that. And that's one of the questions, like, it's an uncomfortable question for all of us to look at, including myself. So every quarter when we go through our business deep dive, that's one of the questions we ask is, are we getting paid for the level of value that we're bringing? So that way, because it's a standard question, I have to answer it and look at it. And then my next question in there is, how can I bring more value? And so I'm always looking at how do I increase my fee, but doing more value at the same time.
I love that, because it comes back to that exchange.
Yeah, definitely. So, but it's there, it's in my head. And the same thing with like rejection, conflict. We're all human. The difference between me and the next person is I've got frameworks to manage it. So I always say to someone, like, you don't go into a meeting unprepared. Like, I've got transformational meeting method. Like, I know exactly how to run a meeting, how to handle it, things go off course, and I know how to bring it back on. Like, everything's a framework. And that way, and it's not about scripting or memorizing or rote learning. It's we all think in processes. And that's what really fascinates me about business is we are people dealing with people, selling to people, providing better lives. So it's all psychology of persuasion. And it's not about being manipulative. It's about understanding how do we move to the best result for us and for them in a way which is going to be uncomfortable for everyone to some degree. But how do we do that together and move together? Like there's that saying, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. But if you want to go further, go together. How do we go together through discomfort? So those thoughts around pricing are definitely in my head, and my thoughts around everything are in my head. What do people think of that ad? I've got a hater on that.
I can almost see the different flow charts coming out of your head as we're conversing.
I'm taking you off track. Sorry.
No, not at all. I love it. We can go in different tangents all day long, and we'll still get back to the points that I want to ask you about. One of the things that I love about your core values is innovation, and I would love to talk about that more from a point of view of innovating the right things at the right time, because I have suffered over the years from shiny object project syndrome. I've suffered with it
me
very
too.
badly at times, and sometimes that takes me onto the track of very exciting things that have no purpose being exciting right in that moment. So given that innovation is one of your values, how hard do you find it to stay on track and on focus with what it is that you want to, that's going to drive your current project or mission closer towards its end target?
Yeah. So the short answer is there's no real way to choose the right thing to innovate. And you don't know when you don't know, how do you know you've chosen the right thing to innovate? When you've got the result.
Yeah.
So it's like, honestly, like for every 10 ideas I have, probably 1 or 2 will stick. And the thing is, when we look at a theme, like what's the theme we want to solve? And then within that category, like what do we need to do as a project? And that'd be the innovation. And then we'll test them all and we'll see what takes off. So we've got a system for testing them, and like we have a bit of fun with it. Like which one's going to work better? We all kind of bet on it, not with the money exchange, but like someone will win a bottle of wine or something. And then like, great, that's the winner. And it's very, very rarely is it the one that we all pick. So we test in small doses because another thing people don't realize about me is that I'm actually really averse to risk. So I've got frameworks to make decisions, and then when I've got that decision there, I go for it hell for leather, and I'm relentless. And that's why we do well, is because I'll outwork anyone and I'll outlast anyone, because when I've made my decision, I just know, like I've got a lot of faith it's going to work because I've tested it. So I go after it in an unwavering fashion. And people will say to me, Tristan, you seem to be taking a lot of risk. It's all coming off you. I'm like, well, no, you don't see the other 9 projects I can on the side. You're seeing the one that I'm really going for because I've got evidence to really go for it. But if I was to pull this back to another conversation, which we could have had, it would be, how do you choose the right things to innovate on? Business is actually simple. Always has been, always will be, but it's not easy. It's not easy because of our humanness, which is our emotions flowing through us. I'm excited, I'm stressed, I'm sad, I'm anxious. Business doesn't care for our emotions. Business just cares for frameworks. And what you do at one level of business, you don't do at the next level, you don't do at the next level. But there are very specific things you do as you walk up a ladder. And that's what business is. So I just look at it as a series of frameworks. I'm like, if you're at, say, 0 to 20K a month, or 20 to 50K a month, or 50 to 80, 80 to 120, 120 to 250, 250, 500, 500K plus per month, 1 million plus per month, I've got different frameworks for all those levels. So when someone says, what should I do? I'm like, here's your toolkit. This is what's been proven and tested. Pick based on your personality. Let's make it work for you. Because whilst everyone needs to do the same thing to get to that next level, they don't need to choose the same tools as the next person. And they don't need to do it in the same way. Someone said to me the other day, Tristan, I would like to get the results you're getting with your marketing, but I don't like doing video. And I said, well, you don't have to do video. Well, yeah, but you do. I'm like, yeah, but that's because I hate writing. Like, what? I'm like, I love writing. I'm like, well, yeah, instead of that video that goes there is in the middle of funnel for me, and your middle of funnel, you can have a long form ad. They're like, oh, amazing. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, success leaves clues. Like, you don't need to do it like me. I'm following a framework, and I'm putting my personality in different segments. So the honest truth is there's no mystery to any of this. And it doesn't pay for me to say that, because there's a certain level of mystery and mystique which makes us look great. But I just want to tell everyone the truth. Like, there's no mystery to what we do, and there's no mystery to what anyone should do. It's just there's a framework, and then being advised on what the next level of innovation is removes that mental load. And I'll test it with a client. Let's test this. Let's test that. Nah, that platform ain't for you. This one's for you. We test it. Like, I want my members to have certainty to execute.
And obviously you want yourself to be able to do that too. One of the things I think you do brilliantly, and I have seen others try and fail, is the ability to bring on other people into your organisation that replicate your systems and frameworks. And also the ability to cross over multiple different professions, which again, I've watched other people try and fail at doing as much as they would like to be able to do that. What do you, I'd love you to speak a little to that in terms of the ability to scale and have people on board that breathe their own personality into your systems, and also the ability to cross over professions that traditionally don't hang out. like
Gotcha.
physiotherapy
Nice.
and chiropractors. So go whichever direction you would love to go in with that, because as I said, I've seen other people try it and fail.
Okay, I'll take two paths. The first one is about team. So like, I'm really clear on my core values first and foremost. And so I want to set everyone straight that's listening here. There's no A player waiting to be discovered. You have to hire. A players are created. So when I interview people, I've got very specific questions based on my core values, and I want to see evidence of them being performed in life. Whether that's like accountability can be demonstrated to me in many different ways. You know, I want to see some self-leadership demonstrated in different ways. Perhaps they've coached a junior sporting team or whatnot. I want to know about responsibility. So I really ask deep questions around that. So I'm really clear. When I onboard people, I've got a very specific onboarding roadmap where I set them up for success, and we invest a lot of time and energy into our people. And talk about the language we use, the tonality we use, the flavor we use. We call it brand scent. Like when you look at that, like, oh, that's us. Like, how do you look at it and feel it, and that's us. So we put a lot of work in that. So I had this epiphany. What year was it? 2015. And I had a really great session with a she wasn't a psychologist, like a life coach, and she was really good at unpacking people's thoughts. And I was in tears by the end of the session. But what it came out to me was, all right, like I've got full permission to be myself. And so what I mapped out is, what does it mean to be me? And if someone else was to have my DNA, what would their day look like, their week look like, their month look like? What would their role look like? How could they come in and impersonate me to the best of their ability, but with their personality and doing it in alignment with my core values? And that's what I did. And so I started that in 2015, and I've been teaching that ever since. So I'm really clear. Like this morning, like as I'm sitting here, I should have turned my apps off, but my Slack channel was going off. Every channel, every part of our organization, like the marketing team, sales team, delivery team, coaching team, I can every day, it's like in the morning, everyone's typing in, here are my goals for the day. And the goals for the day are based on our 90-day plan, brought back to our monthly plan, brought back to what we need to get done in this 4-week chunk. So it's like, what are my 3 goals for the day? What am I excited about today? What value of ours am I going to uphold today? What help do I need from a team member? End of the day, same thing. It's like clockwork for every division. So, because that's what I do. I've done it today already on this. So I'm not tech savvy. I do it on this, and then I type in the Slack channel. For
those who are audio only listening back to the podcast, Tristan just held up a handwritten,
which is illegible.
Eight column illegible document that only he can read.
Yeah, that's right.
It's the ultimate coding.
It's written in code. Yeah, it's written in code. So, I mean, I put a lot of effort into team, and I believe that the best team members are created, you know, and because they don't know what's possible yet, because they haven't been there yet. So it's my role to uncover that. And I see as a CEO, I see my role as, you know, people is my number one thing, hire the right people. Number 2 is develop the right culture. And number 3 is make sure we hit the right numbers. And so, which ultimately comes back to hiring the right people again. So that's question 1. And question 2, with like bringing people together, it never occurred to me not to bring people together from different professions. It never occurred to me. But I just had a really big following from physiotherapy in the early days because that's my background.
Yeah, of course.
And then, so it never occurred to me that other people wouldn't want to work. It never occurred to me, ever. But then I remember that the first person that joined our program outside of physiotherapy was a podiatrist, and I still chat with her and her husband now, and they're fabulous. They're actually traveling over in Europe right now, sending me pictures. It's funny because she says, like, Tristan, I've had my fruit intake for the day. It's always in a cocktail.
I love that.
So that was like 15 years ago when I started working with those guys, and now their practice runs without them, but we keep in touch, and I still advise them. But in any event, like they were like, why should I work with you? And I was like, they're like, I don't actually know. Why do you think you should work with me? And they're like, well, I think because of this. I'm like, well, that works for me. Let's give it a go. So, I'm really big on not pitching. And so I'm like, cool. And it's just the more people you bring in from different niches, the more people you bring in from different niches. And so what I do with my marketing is when I'm segmenting ads, for example, which needs to call out a specific profession, rather, say chiropractic versus acupuncturist versus physical therapist versus dentist, what I do is I get deep inside the mind of my audience, and I write ads that appeal to that person based on their world. So in order to help someone, I need to deeply and intimately understand their world. I need to know what's going on for them. I need to know I can help them. And if I can't help them, I don't write an ad for them because I don't have a solution. Great marketing will help your business if you're awesome at delivering. Otherwise, it's going to create an enormous cluster dump in your life. So my messaging is all very different for different audiences. But the frameworks I give people are identical because business is simple but not easy. And what I help people to do is bring out their true voice in their marketing and their management and their leadership and their sales and their delivery and bring it back to their personality. And as you know, I also do this outside of healthcare. I do it with entrepreneurs, financial advisors, coaches, consultants, agency owners, because business is the same. It's identical. And we just change the language. So I hope that goes to answer your question in some way.
Absolutely it does. You are one of the most systematized, automated humans I've ever met.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. And I do, and that is an absolute compliment, because I think the ability to be able to create systems and then work systems is not a talent that everybody has. And often people that are good at it take it for granted, that other people actually push against it. And often they go, I don't want to have a system, particularly when it comes to healthcare practitioners, because it's like, no, I need to reinvent the wheel. It's like, well, you don't actually. But I'd love your thoughts on that when people, because at the end of the day, if you're not using a system, that is actually a system within itself. But do you often feel pushback from people when you start suggesting more systems?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's about, I'm very careful with the way I language it. So like I pick up pretty quickly on language that people will reject or feel uncomfortable with, and I find what language they're comfortable with, and then I use that. Once again, love language for me is words of affirmation. So it makes sense. I'm like, I hear the words and pick up on that. So I've got a system for creating systems, but I think if we break it back to anything, it's like, well, in healthcare, we've got clinical reasoning. I wouldn't just look at a patient coming through and let them take control, or I wouldn't have a randomness to my assessment. I've got a very clear process, because that's how I'm like, I can assess, I can diagnose, and I can treat, I can plan accordingly. Business is exactly the same. It's like, how do we look at it as we've got this living business. It's living. It's got a flow. It's got a head, heart, and hands. It's got the brain, heart, and hands, and they're all going to work together. And we're going to diagnose it all and look at it and go, all right, in order for this to work, it needs to look like this. And like I said, I've got a system for creating a system, and it's quite simply like this. Like, what does success look like in this one area? What does success not look like? And you need to be hyper specific. It's like, if success was to be true, I would know that when, criteria 1, 2, and 3, what actions must be taken in order to do that? Boom. How often do they need to happen? Who needs to do them? What is the method that these people need to execute them in? Then how do we define their role so that they know that those tasks are paramount to their role? And then what are the measures that go in place for their reviews? And then what training and mentoring is available to help them succeed in that? And so ultimately, I think when people understand the benefit of a system is ensuring that everything is in flow. Whereas I think when oftentimes people hear a word, be it profit or systems or management, there's like an antalgic response because of the way that we have related to that in the past. And it's like, well, just because we've had someone that was all a punitive manager in the past doesn't mean that management can't be kind and empathetic and genuine and powerful. Just because we've had systems that are clunky or don't make sense or are cumbersome doesn't mean that we can't have them in a way which are easy to access, easy to understand, and save us plenty of free time. So I need a system in place because I know that if a business is dependent on me and I get hit by a truck, my clients are in trouble. And I'm here to build a legacy. Because I think it's selfish. Well, that's just my personal belief. It's not reality. It's not truth. It's my belief. I believe it's selfish to build a business which cannot continue with beyond us. Because if it shuts down when we're gone, our vision isn't big enough. Like, we're here for a good time and a powerful time, not a long time. If we're not aiming to leave some sort of legacy behind, then I think that we're really underserving our community, our profession, and ourselves. And the only way to have true impact and to share ourselves with others is through systems. So there's a fantastic young man that works now. He's like the head of business development, and he's just taken on some huge clients like Russell Brunson is a really big name. They do some really big work with some other famous people. And he started working with me, and I catch up with him all the time. And he's like, mate, it's like you always say, systems-based thinking. And I'll share a quote around that in my final 5 questions because that'll pull it all full circle.
I like that. You bring me to my next question with the people
Please.
that you consistently have conversations with and that you have around you. Has that group of people that you started off having around you 15, 20 years ago, has that shifted to who you now surround yourself with now?
Definitely. Yeah, completely. So the real stats are on super high performers, of which I aspire to be one, that you will turn over your friendship group every 7 years.
Yeah.
And that there'll be a very small percentage of that group if you are really dedicated to growth. So I've got friends dating back, like my best friend, he and I have been mates since we were 12, and we're still best friends. And because he's always leveling up. But I catch up with him one-to-one because I don't catch up with his friends anymore. Because I've outgrown them. And that's no disrespect to them, but it's just there's no value. I won't give them value and vice versa. They would feel triggered, I believe.
Yes.
So it's constantly evolving. And the people I have deepest friendships with are those that are on the same path as me. You know Ben Elliott, for example, who's a mindset mentor in our program. He's one of my best friends. We catch up all the time because we're always about leveling each other up. I've got incredible relationships with Josh, who's on our team, head of business development. We're constantly leveling each other up. Chris, who runs the Vanguard program with me, we've known each other since we were 26. I used to coach him, actually, and now he's my mentor. What a journey that is. How's that?
That's something to unpack.
Yeah, I know. And I'm like, it's just I'm so blessed having him in my life. But it changes constantly. I want to be clear. I'm not running through and going, all right, this friend is off the list anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It's 6 years, 362 days, and you're gone.
Yeah. I need to do that.
There's like a clock ticking on everybody. It's like start now. It's some dystopic movie.
Yeah, it's just really funny. Like I just think I think we're way too tolerant, and I'm not suggesting being intolerant, but what I am saying is the people around you will influence your behaviour, and if people have you second guessing yourself, don't be around them. And I include family in that conversation, by the way. Like I find it really punitive, the whole conversation of but they're your family. I'm like, that's true, and family should behave better. So I want to be around people that lift me up and energize me. And if they don't do that for any reason, I will not spend time with them. End of story. So I've got extraordinarily strong boundaries around me.
I love that. And I think that then becomes a system within itself. And I certainly speak a lot to that on other episodes of Aligned You, of the curation of who, and getting more discerning with it over the years of the curation of who I spend time with. If I don't feel energized, if I feel drained after having been with certain people, it's like, oh, hang on. First I check in with myself going, did I bring all of me? Like, was there something going on for me that day? And it's like, no, that's a consistent feeling I have when I've actually spent time with somebody. And then it's a clear curation of let's not do that anymore because it actually pulls me away from the stuff I love.
Yes, like Dan Kennedy, the famous businessman and author, he's got this funny one. And I'm picking up that I can lay down some inappropriate stuff here.
You can lay down whatever you like here. Okay. You can always edit afterwards, but let's go.
Okay, so if everyone's like, there's like a big gap, then my thing was edited out. So his mantra is
you'll just hear a boo at the end.
if you wake up 3 days in a row thinking about the same person bothering you, then unless you're sleeping with them, you got to get them out of your life.
I like that. And even then, if you're sleeping with them, you really need to assess what they're doing next to you or what you're walking out of their house.
Yeah, if they're an employee and you're sleeping with them and you're waking up 3 days,
that's a whole nother issue.
Yeah, I can't help in that area. But if you're waking up and you've got this feeling about someone they're not aligned with you, that's fine. So this is like something which I never heard anyone else say, and I can't remember where I learned it, but if you can tell me where I learned it, then I'd be appreciative because I'll start referring to this person in the future. But people are not aligned to other people. People are not loyal. People are loyal to their value system. And so people come in and out of our lives. But if we look at it and we examine it throughout our whole life, it'll be like, oh, at this point in my life, we had a common interest, and that's what our relationship was, like teenage years, early years, university years. We had commonality with interests, but our values were always different. But now you get into this adult world where we're really pursuing making a difference, where we're in a values-based, well, we're pursuing values. So it becomes so clear, like, oh, I'm not seeing Tim anymore because we're not going to uni lectures. Oh, but we used to get along so great. What went wrong? And it's like, well, nothing ever went wrong. You're catching up because of commonality. And if you sat down and looked at your values, then you never would have been mates in the first place. So we're loyal to our values, and our values pretty much stick for life. Like we can change them through a lot of effort, but our values are pretty clear. The key is in living by them. That's the challenge. But our values are always there, and our relationships must reflect that if we're to genuinely build deep and meaningful relationships and to genuinely feel lit up. Once again, my opinion only, not fact, just my opinion. Oh, John DeMartini. He came up with that. Let's see what it is.
John DeMartini. I love John DeMartini. I got to see him at Macquarie University when I was still a chiropractic student, because you would know he's a chiropractor before he started moving into human behaviour. And he came and did a master's series for the master's students. This is 20-odd years ago now. But, quite amazing man. But that, again, conversation for another time. Oh, amazing. What's a utopic day look like for you, Tristan? Oh, and by the way, so how often did you see your beautiful partner in the doggy park before you actually started talking to her? Because I want to hear about that.
Well, that's okay. Here we go. All right. She'll have the similar version. So
it's all right. Ames has a different version to my version too. Mine tends to be more long-winded.
So my morning routine for a while there, like I went through, as you know, I went through a really challenging separation with my former wife. And so I find myself one day, like by myself, unexplained, and still to this day unexplained. But I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. So I'm here with my 2 French bulldogs, and trying to manage them. And I'd walk them around the block every morning around 5:15, and I'd have a conference call at 6 a.m. either with the UK or the US, because we've got clients all over the world. And so there's a cafe that opens at 6 a.m. near my house, and so I'd always end up there with the dogs. And I just noticed this woman walk past one day, and I saw her, and I just felt the energy. I'm like, I need to get to meet this woman. There's something. And anyway, she didn't feel the same. She'll just head down. And so she had this.
I don't know who this dodgy dude is at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, correct. Carry on. She had this like gorgeous little mini schnauzer, and walking past. And at this point, Gigi, my girl French bulldog, she was quite aggressive, and she was always dog aggressive. And so anyway, Inika walks past with her miniature schnauzer, and she picks him up and then walks past me, and then like to not come near us. And I was like, oh, poor Gigi, she'll never have any friends. This is really sad. And I'm like, got to keep working on her. And then so anyway, the next time I see Inika, I'm actually just there with Watson, my other Frenchie, because I left Gigi at home because she's really dog aggressive. And then so this time I'm like, oh, that's a woman again. I've got to say hello. And she walked past, and this time she still picked up her dog and walked past me. I'm like, oh, this isn't about Gigi. She doesn't want to meet me. Like I'm dodgy or something. So that was the second time. The third time I came across her, I was walking with both dogs, and her dog, Otis, just came straight up to say hello. So she couldn't avoid the conversation. And it turned out the reason she was picking up Otis and walking past was because he hadn't had his vaccinations yet, because he was such a young puppy, and he couldn't come in contact with other dogs.
That's a very good sweep on her account.
And it was just a very general conversation. But I said, oh, I love your dog. And she's like, yeah, he's really good, but I'm having a bit of difficulty with managing him because my staff have to look after him sometimes when I go out for meetings. And for me, I'm like, oh, wow, she owns a business. It's incredible. So then I asked her what she did. She owns a social media consultancy. So I was like, that's fascinating. So then I did what any other sensible man would do, and I stalked her online.
Doesn't matter what your gender is, that's a sensible thing to do in whatever year it was. In 20 post social media, past 2010, that is always a sensible thing to do.
Yeah,
when it comes to dating.
You got to bear in mind, I've been married for the 7 years, and I'd been single. Like I hadn't seen anyone. I've got no idea what I'm doing. But I'm like, I just want to meet this woman.
Kindred spirits there too.
Yeah, I just had to. I'm just useless, and I had to. So I found her on Facebook, but her name's Inika. I'm like, how do I spell that? I couldn't even find her anywhere. So I find her and I add her, and I'm like patiently waiting. I hope she accepts my friendship. And And it's just like, you're a kid again. And then when she did, I just sent her a message, and then like gradually broke down her resistance to let her think, so she wouldn't think I'm a creep. And we went out for a coffee to talk about business, and just to catch up. I thought, it doesn't matter what happens, I just want to get to know her. And we caught up, and like we've been together ever since that first catch up. Yeah, I'm really, really lucky. So anyway, there you go.
And for those of you who are audio only, it's really beautiful to see Tristan lighting up as he's speaking about that whole experience. His face is absolutely lit up as he's talking about those things that matter most for him. And it's we have so many synergies. At some point over a glass of something good, I'm sure we'll discuss it. But Ames and I, so my beautiful wife and I got married at the end of last year, and our first in-person sighting was actually at the doggy park that's around the corner from my practice.
Amazing.
And so we met a little bit more of the old-fashioned way in the terms of how we connected, in that we were on a dating app. So I'd split up from my ex a few years ago, and I was on an app, and I had worked through all my systems of what I needed to invoke when I saw somebody's photo, which it needed to be a "who's that?" Otherwise, I wasn't swiping right. And then when it came to Amy's picture, there were a couple of things that nearly stopped me swiping right. One was that her name was Amy, because my mum's name was Amy, but it's spelled differently. So that's how I justified that wasn't weird. And also that I didn't actually call my mum by her first name. I called her mum. So that was also not weird. And then also the other thing is on Hinge, which is one of the apps that I was on, it actually has what suburb you're in. So at that point, Ames was living about 500 metres away from my practice. And for those of you who, and you can see it at the moment, Tristan, I have big fishbowl-like windows that go straight at street level. So I'm like, oh, fuck, what if this chick's a nutcase and she lives 500 metres away from the practice? Like, this could be very pear-shaped. But anyway, she'd elicited a big enough "who's that?" for me to swipe right anyway. And then crickets, nothing, didn't hear from her. And then a couple of days later, I had I serendipitously, but not serendipitously, I'd ended up at the doggy park a bit earlier than usual. I've spotted Ames from 150 metres away, and by this point, Atlas was already off lead because it's an off lead doggy park. And I said to Atlas, "Whatever you do not go over to that little dog," which is Coco, now my step puppy. And so I love it when dogs have actually know better than their owners, as the same with Otis actually went up to your dogs at the time. And Atlas, of course, beeline for Coco's butt. And I'm like,
oh wow.
And I'm like, oh no, there's that hot chick. She hadn't swiped right. How embarrassing. By the time I got closer to her to get Atlas away from Coco, I'd pulled myself together and thought it was all quite humorous. Anyway, fast forward a couple of days, I get this message from Ames saying, "Hey," and there's a longer version to this story, but "Hey, did I happen to see you in the park the other day? I'm never on these apps, but I as I was walking past you the other day, I thought you were cute. Never thought in a million years you'd be single, and yet 2 days later, here you are sitting on my app." And anyway, long story short, we're married. We got married 12 months to the day that we saw each other in the doggy park for the first time. So
how good is that?
Oh, it's a good story. I can make it longer, but it's there was lots of moments of that reasons why we're in certain places at a certain time. But we could talk about all of our synergies for a very long time. But tell me more about what is a perfect day for you, because I know you live by your calendar. Like, again, no one else, I think, anybody I've ever met quite so much.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll talk you through the week because I actually enjoy the week more than weekends.
Okay.
I'm going to say it's not rigid, but I do have rituals. So first thing I do each morning is I walk the dog. So I'm up at 5:15 every morning. My partner is up at 5 o'clock. So I get up at 5:15. That's just what works for me. And the first thing I do is I walk one of the dogs. Because we alternate. We've got Otis and his little sister Lila, both beautiful mini schnauzers. So I go for a walk, come back, and then shower, get ready for the day. And the first thing I do for the day is I pull out my analog list for the day. What are my big goals for the day? What do I need to focus on? But I've actually written that the day before. So every day when I finish at 3 o'clock, that's when I do my end of day wrap and I plan for the next day. So each day I've got 3 major projects I'm going to work on that they're clearly mapped out inside my calendar, and I just go for it. When I'm working on it, I have Spotify on. I make sure that I'm listening to this focus music That way, if anything else comes up, which it would if I allowed myself to look in my Slack channel or email or phone, it would just explode. So I just focus on getting the big rocks moved ahead. So for me, that's a perfect day. Every day is a perfect day provided I'm running to routine. Like meetings during the week are all in flow, like when I need to have them, when I don't. So if I'm thinking about a perfect weekend day, I'm categorically probably the most boring person you'll ever meet. So a weekend day, think Saturday, for example, it's my favorite day of the week. Inika does Pilates at 7. I go to the gym at 7. Afterwards, we meet up at home, walk the dogs to a local cafe. So we're really blessed. We live near Norwood Parade in Norwood and Adelaide, and it's my favourite place. We go and find a cafe, sit down outside, and we just have breakfast with the dogs, walk home, read the paper, and then I'm all done. That night, we'll go out for dinner, but in between, I don't want to do anything. I just absolutely want to chill out. So I try to keep my weekends really, really quiet. You know, I want to re-energize. I'm actually an introvert, so for me, it's like I go hard during the week on my 3 big rocks every single day. I've got my routine, my beginning of day, my end of day wrap, and between finishing work and going to bed, we cook dinner together, and then we get into watching something to wind down on Netflix or Stan or Binge or Apple Plus and so on.
Yeah,
it's a little bit boring.
No,
and we love a wine on the weekend.
I think you can drop the boring out. That sounds like pretty much my perfect weekend too. It was so interesting. A story I'll share with you. I had a mate of mine from uni come and visit in March. He lives in WA, and so because of Fortress WA, we weren't able to see each other for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And when he came to visit, he and his husband have a really busy social life. They're very extroverted. He loves being around people all the time. Personally, I'm an extroverted introvert. I definitely I get charged by being around certain people, but I don't like big crowds.
I can relate to that.
Ames and I have a really simple life where and she now works in the practice, as you know. She had retired from her social work practice at the start of the year. It just was not serving her, dealing with other people in crisis all the time. So as it turned out, I was very lucky she could come into MRC to help guide it. And anyway, it was so interesting because he kept saying to us, so what else do you guys do? And I went, no, my values are growth in terms of my personal development and disruption, quality in terms of who I hang out with and what we eat and the things that I surround myself with. It's also abundance in terms of my health and other aspects of my life. Yes. And it's connection and connecting people with people thoroughly and deeply. I love, if I was looking at Gallup Strengths, which I'm a coach in as well, is that I'm very high in relating to people, but in a deep level, not at a superficial level. And so it was so interesting. He's like, yeah, but what else do you do? I go, well, we go to Sunrise, we go to the beach, we go get a great coffee, we go to amazing restaurants. What else do you want us to be doing?
sounds like my life.
Yeah, it's like, because he's like, oh, do you go and see live music? No. Do you go here?
Oh,
no. Do you go here?
I'm repelled by live music. I was like, it's too many people.
Too many people, it's too loud. It's all this, but it's just so interesting. So I think I guess it comes down to what floats your boat is not boring. Exactly. It's what lights you up. And I resonate with
That's
it
what lights
very
me
similarly.
Up.
Yeah, and I can see that. And other people I'm sure can hear it as well. I really appreciate that. All right, we're nearly done for today. We're going to finish off.
I don't want this to end.
I know, we might need to do a part 2 at some point.
I'd love to.
I reckon we can do a few good interviews, but we'll talk about that.
One of your top 5 questions. Sorry, these might have changed now.
Well, Tristan said at the start his favourite song might have changed by the time we get here. So, as you know, I finish off all of my regular episodes with my top 5, but today it gets to be your top 5. So, what song is on high rotation, or is there a favourite song at the moment?
So there is a favourite song, but it's not on high rotation.
Okay.
So I'd say on high rotation right now is Money Trees by Kendrick Lamar.
Ooh.
And have you listened to it? It's so cool. It only ended up on my Spotify because my partner Inika is really, really into, I'm not sure you call it rap, hip hop. I'm not sure. So she's
so old and white right now.
Diverse. Yeah, I got no idea. I'm just like, oh, that sounds cool. So then it starts coming through. It's on high rotation. Funnily enough, also, I've got a lot of K-pop on high rotation because once again, Inika listens to that. This band called Blackpink. They're like the most downloaded band in the world, apparently. But if I was going to say my favourite song, It'd be Money for Nothing by Dire Straits.
Oh, and that's just classic.
Yeah, it's just because that reminds me of when I first started listening to music when I was around 6 or 7. And my best friend at the time was playing it. I was like, wow, this music is so cool. So that's my first musical experience. I'm like, yeah. So at events, you'll notice I play that because it just reminds me back of discovering music. Yeah.
Very good. All right. What are you reading at the moment or listening to on audiobooks?
So I'm going to pull it up for you. I always read multiple things. So, and when I say read, I've transcended reading. I listen. I do audiobooks. So I'm listening to the 10X Mentor right now by Grant Cardone. And at the same time, I'm listening to Max Out Your Life by Ed Milet.
Oh, and if you're listening to audiobook, my next question is, do you listen at 1 time speed, 1.5, 2 or 3 times speed?
I listen at 1 time speed. And I know that that's counterintuitive for time effectiveness. But the reason I do that is, especially if it's the author, I want to hear their voice. Yeah. I want to be like, that's what they're like. So the way I get around consuming more information is I just spend more time at the gym and put it on when I'm on the treadmill.
A very good answer. What have you done over the last 7 days to de-stress and align and decompress? Very good question. So in the last 7 days, well, even today, going through my goals for the day, end of day goals yesterday, I always do that religiously every day. If I miss a day, I probably won't feel it too much. If I miss 2 days, I'm going to start feeling it. So that's part of my routine. But every week, something I've done to align, Inika and I do a partner check-in meeting every week. And we talk through, how have I shown up for you this week? And what have I done that you've appreciated? How can I show you more love in the coming week? Is there any conflict that we have that we need to resolve? How can we best resolve it? Do you have any stresses coming up, and how can I best serve you? And what are you excited about coming up in our relationship? So we do that every Sunday night and straight after dinner. And so I find that with us, relationships are constantly evolving and growing, and it's so important that we connect and have that conversation. And I actually have a very similar conversation with my leadership team at Practice Acceleration every week, which is not a, hey, here's your performance. It's, hey, how are you going this week? What's going on in your life? Is there anything you'd like to share with me that I don't know about? How am I showing up as your leader? Is there anything I've done to upset you? How can I resolve this? So alignment conversations for me are a constant, and I don't know how my life would function without them. Well, when you're on a good thing, continue evolving it. That's awesome. I really like that.
Absolutely.
I'm going to be borrowing that one at home.
Please do it. I'll send you the questions.
I'd love the questions. That would be awesome. That would be great. Yeah. If you're happy for me to share them with the listeners, we'll pop them into the show notes.
Definitely. Absolutely.
That would be awesome. It's so powerful. I think there's a lot of people, and I've experienced it in the past in previous relationships, where we just expect things to happen on their own magically.
Yeah.
Versus being intentional with our intentions around it. What is your favourite quote or quote of the day?
So this is my favourite quote. High performers are only high performers because they never don't do the basics.
Ooh, I like it. Who is that, a Tristan Bond quote, or is that somebody else's quote?
I don't know where I got it.
The famous author Anon? I reckon you can claim that. Sounds like your words.
Yeah. I'll take it. I've got another one. This is definitely mine. In fact, I've got a T-shirt in there to prove it. A client sent it to me. It never pays to not be clever.
Oh, I like that as well. Very much so.
Yeah, and it's written backwards and upside down. Jody Moran sent that to me. It's really funny.
I like that a lot. What's your final thought to leave the Aligned You listeners with today?
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. And I was finding it tough when I was reading it before. So honestly, I don't consider myself someone that has all the advice, but here's something that I live by. I think that no matter what I want to achieve, it's about being very clear with what I want to achieve and having very clear goals, because we can always go further. But if our goal is just improvement for the sake of improvement or more for the sake of more, it's like looking at the horizon. Like, we can chase after it, but we're never going to get there. But if we have incremental goals with any area of our life and we set ourselves up for success, we can get there and look back and look how far we've come. And I find that serves me really, really well. Like I break everything down into small goals And when I get there, I look back and I'm grateful for how far I've come. And I look at that more so than how far I've got to go. And looking at how far I've come, or if, as a listener, if you're looking at how far you've come, some of the things I like to celebrate too are, what have I overcome in this last 90 days that was really challenging? And I can show compassion for myself for, because that was really hard. So just overcoming tough obstacles, I think, is worth celebrating. So I think the answer is, we're all capable of more, but to be clear on what you are chasing. Otherwise, there'll be that constant search for why aren't I feeling elated all the time? And we're never going to get to that. But if we have clear goals, we can move towards them. We can always look back and look at honestly how far we've come, what we've overcome, and really take some celebration out of that, reset the next goal, and just keep going. So that's something that served me well, and I like to share it with everyone. But that's not advice, it's just a final thought.
Oh, I love that thought. And if people wish to take that advice, I have a feeling it will serve them very well. Tristan, I so appreciate your time today. I know you're a really busy guy, and I appreciate that you've chunked out some time for me and the Aligned You listeners today. There is so many pearls of wisdom in what we've got to talk about today. That's it for this week, Aligned You listeners. Bye for now, and I'll catch you next time.
Thank you so much, Dr. M. Absolute pleasure.
And that's it for today's episode, Aligned You listeners. Remember to hit the 5-star ratings and share today's episode with your friends. And be sure to join our collective on Facebook and Instagram at Aligned You. Look forward to catching you next time. The information shared on Aligned You podcast is of general nature and for information purposes only. It is not specific medical or personal advice. You should seek assistance from your healthcare practitioner for your individual circumstances. Any information provided doesn't imply endorsement or third-party devices or products and cannot provide you with health and medical advice.